And then a couple of young people, I think, asked the minister if there could perhaps be an opportunity to discuss big questions and learn a bit about prayer.
The young people asked this themselves?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think any of us would ever have probably wouldn't have crossed our minds to suggest that to the young people. I think we just thought they wouldn't be, if we'd thought about it, I think we probably would have thought, maybe that's a bit much. Maybe we'll just continue with the youth club. But they asked about it. And so Douglas, our minister, asked if I would be involved with leading some of the prayer element of that. About 6 months ago now, started prayer with them.
And most of them hadn't had any church experience before?
I don't think so, no. Some of them have had, a couple of them do have parents who go to church, but on the whole, they're really, really not churchgoers at all. God, how do you feel about me today? Which I always find is a very powerful way to begin prayer. And it's actually quite a scary way to begin, but usually it's immensely comforting, I find. And then the questions might lead on to something like, is there a promise, a scripture, a word that you might want to give to me today, or a tool you want to give me to perhaps help me to cope with a certain situation, or something like that. So that's the guided prayer that I've been used to.
Which sounds fascinating for its own sake.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I'm picturing you're doing this with young people who haven't got a biblical knowledge and aren't used to praying. Mm-hmm. And so how does it work with them? What are they experiencing? What are they telling you? Well,
so that first time I did it, it was in hindsight, it was quite a bold way to begin prayer. And I don't know how long it went on for, probably about 20 minutes. And I had, I suggested they might want to close their eyes and so on. I don't know if they did or not. I did, so I'm not sure. There was quite a lot of giggling. I mean, they were really unused to this. I'm a teacher, so I was sort of prepared for, I know what high school pupils are like, and it didn't really faze me because I knew this was going to be a strange experience. But we got through it, and at the end, I think they were slightly shell-shocked by what had just happened to them. But a lot of them said they found it really peaceful, and one of them said she hadn't felt peace like that in over 4 years. And then our minister's wife is a teacher at a local high school, and the next day, one of the girls who'd been in this prayer session went into class, and Suzanne, the minister's wife, heard her saying to her friends, I went to this prayer thing last night and we prayed and it was amazing. And the feedback was they didn't want to spend the whole time praying, but they'd liked the prayer and they did want to continue praying. They just wanted more space for discussion as well. And I suppose they keep coming back, so it's still going. It's still going strong, actually. So the discussion has taken some different forms. For quite a long time, we had these big sheets of paper out on the tables, and it might just be general chat, and some of them would doodle on the paper, or some of them would write down questions, and we'd choose a question to discuss the following week. And some of them were quite ethical questions, or general questions about life and purpose and whatever they'd chosen. More recently, we've got a pack of cards from the 24/7 prayer movement I think they're called Deep and Meaningful Conversations. Okay. And so often they'll go through this pack of cards and just choose a question to discuss, and it could be, they cover an enormous range of topics. But the discussions can be quite superficial. There's a lot of laughter. At times it's a bit irreverent. There's quite often swearing, and then they look at me and Douglas and say, sorry. And we say, it's all right, we've heard those words before. It's not your typical Bible study. I mean, it's not a Bible study, but I don't think it's your typical Christian youth group, because in a sense it's not. It's a space for people without this. It's honestly, it's like nothing I've ever experienced before. It's the only thing that I do in my life where I go each week thinking, I don't quite know what I'm doing here, and I don't quite know what I'm going to be, what's going to come out of tonight, if and how I'm going to be helpful. We do respond to feedback, and there is sometimes feedback. So occasionally, Douglas or I will try something or suggest something. One time we listened to a song which was about prayer, which they really didn't like, and we've decided not to do that again. I suppose the thing that I sort of arm myself with is, first of all, prayer for myself and for the group and for the discussions, because the things that come up can be quite they can be quite big. A lot of our children are in therapy. There's a huge amount of mental health issues, issues around gender identity, sexuality, bereavement. They're dealing with big things, and that's on top of the usual kind of social media issues and friendship issues that teenagers are facing nowadays. So I go in just ready to be really open, see what happens. And at the moment, that's sort of it. We're just seeing where they want to go with it. So sometimes we will directly use the Bible. Douglas, the minister, is very good for sort of guiding a discussion to what Jesus might have said about something, or what the Bible might say about something. So we sometimes get the Bibles out and have a look. And in fact, a couple of months ago now, they started asking for Bibles. Well, I think maybe one of them asked for a Bible. So we ordered some youth Bibles, and then they all wanted one. And then we ran out and had to order some more. And we haven't really used the Bibles in the sessions. They've taken them away with them, and they haven't brought them back. And some of them have come back saying, oh, I read this in the Psalms. This is a Psalm I really like. There was another thing we did. We haven't done this in a while, but some of them are quite artistic. And they had an idea that we might pick a Bible verse and take it away and then come back with a piece of art based on it, which we did for a couple of weeks, and some of them were into it and some of them weren't. But in general, we do, whatever the discussion is, one of us, Douglas or myself, we'll say either what the Bible will say or what we think God would say about a certain situation. And I think that's quite interesting because, and I find this a lot with, not just with this group, but with most people outside the church, have enormous misconceptions about Christianity and about Jesus. And something that I think has changed as the weeks have gone on and the months have gone on is there was a certain amount of hostility towards God from some of them, and perhaps there still is. But I think there is less, and I think perhaps, I certainly hope that there's a bit more of an understanding about the true message of Jesus. One thing I didn't mention, and this is another really big part of the prayer that we do, is that throughout the session there are post-it notes on the table, and they can write prayers which are generally anonymous, although some of them, through the things they write, they're quite easily identifiable. But they fold up their post-it notes and they put them in bowls labelled "Thank you," "Sorry," "Please," or "Why." They don't have to fit within a bowl, but they write post-it notes if they want to. And some weeks we get loads and loads, and some weeks it's just one or two. But then one of us will take them away, send photos to the other person, share them, and we'll pray about them. And that gives a really interesting insight into what's going on in their lives. And it's often things that they might not share with the group, or they might not share with us. But it's fascinating. I mean, it ranges from praying for healing for family members, praying for world situations. One that really struck me as a teacher that I read once was I'm sorry for being rude to my teachers today. There was another one which was, God, I'm sorry I don't believe in you, but please can you, I think it was something like, please can you heal my friend, or something like that. And it's just kind of, it's a total privilege to get to read these and pray about them. I really, really hope that the things we do in the discussion, the things we talk about in the discussion, and also the way that we pray might help them to deal with certain situations, and also to deal with situations in their lives with their, school is just a big issue, teachers, parents, friendships. Like we had a while ago, we had a session on forgiveness because there'd been an issue in the youth club with one young person who was just causing some issues and upsetting a lot of people. And so we talked about what the Bible says, what Jesus says about forgiveness. And then the following week, one girl who'd been really, really upset by this, she came in and she said, "You will not believe what I did this week. Someone was really rude to me and I just didn't get involved. I didn't batter them. I walked away. And do you not think that was really mature?" The relationship with the church is an interesting one because at the moment it's fairly separate, although some of the young people do come along and help with Messy Church. They've come to help with our holiday club in the summer. They're really, they're very willing to give up their time and come along. One of them was quite interested in coming along to church. She hasn't yet made it, and I'm not sure if she will. She works on a Sunday morning, so timings are difficult. But I do think if they were all to sort of pile into church on a Sunday morning, I do wonder what our congregation would make of them. I'm sure they'd be absolutely delighted, but there are enormous sort of cultural divides, I think, probably between any teenagers and the rest of society. But, the way they talk, the way they dress, the way they are, I don't know if they would sit through an hour-long church service and do the right things at the right time. I just don't know. So I don't know if church as we maybe think of it, like on a Sunday morning, will ever be for them. I hope it could be. I don't know. I think if it were ever to be, they might have to have some kind of input into it. They might maybe have a role. There's one girl at the moment who's very interested in music, and I play the organ, so she's been coming to play the organ, and she loves it. And there may possibly be a route in with music if she's up for that. I don't know if she would be. She might not want to take part in a church service. So I really don't know, and I think that's quite important to not know and to be open, because if we had thought back to when we started growing young, that this would be happening, that weekly we'd be doing prayer with young people, and they would want to come, and that they'd ask for Bibles, and that some of them would ask to come to church, and they'd ask for prayer for things. We would never have considered it. And I think our own expectations and perhaps sometimes feelings of hopelessness around where the church is at the moment can limit our expectations of what God is going to do. And so at the moment I'm thinking, I've no idea where this might lead. I really, really hope the experience that these young people are having now will impact their future lives. I hope it will impact their relationships, the way they think about the world, and the way they think about God. So I mentioned we use these deeper, meaningful conversation cards.
24/7
That's
cards.
right. And they also have prayer ones. So Douglas ordered the prayer deck as well. And I took them home because we were thinking, right, we could use these at Youth Club. And I took them home and I looked through them and I thought, okay, right, these ones might work. These ones are too out there. We won't use those. But I put them all back in the pack and I brought them down to Youth Club. And I said, if anyone wants to have a look through these, feel free. And they were really into them, actually. And again, it's just so strange, given that this is a non-church going group of people. They pick them up and say, oh, this talks about Psalm such and such. Oh, I love that verse. Or, oh, can we look that up in the Bible? And this kind of thing, which is just very surprising. And then another one, so a girl who is very, very clear about not believing in God, not wanting anything to do with it. One of them said, I think the idea was to wash your hands and forgive somebody or ask for God's forgiveness for a situation. And she came up at the end to me and said, I really like this one, and I'm going to do this. And it's not going to be, I think something like, I'm not going to involve God, or I'm not going to do it to God or talk about God, but I'm going to do this because it's going to help me to deal with the situation. But then we thought, right, okay, one person can just choose one, and we'll all do this as our prayer this evening. And so a girl who had really been quite sort of hostile towards the whole process, and was a big giggler actually when we had some issues with giggling during the guided prayer. She wanted to do one which said, lie on the floor and invite the presence of God to fill you. And so she tried it by herself while we were all discussing, and she got up and said, that was amazing. And she said, should we all do it? So all of us went and lay down on the floor, and there was silence for a bit, and I thought, oh, perhaps we'll do some guided prayer. So I just sort of invited God and invited everyone to think through to reflect on a few things, sort of examine style, so reflecting on the day that they've had and what might be coming up for them. And it was quite powerful, actually. And so it is really hard to explain exactly what goes on in Youth Club, and I hope I've explained it somewhat, but that I think is quite a good example of sometimes we're on the floor inviting the presence of God.